Okay, we're going to start with the Examiner this morning, and it is a picture of Katie Taylor and her 5 belts stepping up. Taylor reveals plans to become world champion at 3 weight, so she's not stopping anytime soon. Declan Bogue, Tyrone players were seriously out of tune with their actions in Auckland. We'll get to that in a minute. Playing without fear, McCarthy won't change Cork's bold approach against mighty Dubs. Tip blow Deisha away to advance to Munster under-20 final in style as the Premier class. Dundalk boss Perth wary of Riga's power game. Obviously this is the Champions League fixture this week. Fantasy football, Super 8's finally delivering the dream matchup, says Kieran Shannon. And there you go. That is his column on the back page of the Examiner.
The back page of the Irish Independent leads with Lindelof joining the United list of potential departures. So this is Victor Lindelof potentially on the way out of Manchester United. His agent has been speaking to Mundo Deportivo, saying Lindelof is in the orbit of a great European club, but leaving United depends on the English club, he says. This is a James Ducker piece from the Daily Telegraph carried in the newspaper this morning. Also in the newspaper, Mino Raiola is quoted talking to TalkSport, talking about Paul Pogba naturally, saying the player has done nothing wrong. He has been respectful and professional in every way and always. The club has known his feelings for a long time. It is a shame other people only like to criticise without the right information, and I'm also sorry that the club does not take any position against this. Hopefully there will soon be a satisfying solution for all parties. Paul Pogba, of course, having done nothing wrong, despite the fact that last month, he says, for me, I've been 3 years at Manchester after this season, and everything that has happened with my season being my best season as well, I think it could be a good time for me to have a new challenge somewhere else. Is that doing something wrong as a player who's contracted to the club? Some might say it is. Also on the back page of the Indo, you've got Katie Taylor pictures. She's across the newspapers talking about her next move in terms of potentially moving up a weight class. And also here, an exclusive by Rory O'Connor, Sexton thumb injury gives World Cup rivals chance to impress Schmidt. So by all accounts, there's been some ferocious sessions going on so far in Ireland's pre-season, which is only natural, I guess, when some of the Southern Hemisphere teams at the Rugby Championship and all that to look forward to. Sexton has injured his thumb. He should be back, could be back at the very least for the August 10th opener, which is the warm-up game against Italy.
Okay, Johnny Sexton's injured, everybody. Draw a deep breath and calm down. A non-runner GA chief says doubleheader was unfeasible. GA President John Horan insists nothing can be done to facilitate a doubleheader involving Cork footballers and hurlers at Croke Park this weekend. So obviously Cork are playing Dublin in football on Saturday evening, and Cork are in action in the hurling doubleheader on Sunday against Kilkenny. Both games are in Croke Park, and some Cork fans think that the Cork-Kilkenny hurling match should have been fixed for Saturday evening before the Cork-Dublin football game. Now, Horan says, when you talk about the Cork supporter, the Cork football supporter is a different cohort to the Cork hurling supporter. It's unfortunate for the guy that bridges both, or woman, or family. It's a positive from a Cork point of view that they're doing well in both, but you can't fit everything in. If you were trying to put 3 fixtures on a Sunday, where would you put the Dublin Cork game? At 12 o'clock to get them all in? I mean, did anybody ever suggest a triple header? Did anybody ever suggest moving the Dublin footballers to 12 noon? No one did. This is like the best straw man I've ever seen. Can't put the Dublin footballers at 12 o'clock on a Sunday. Could you? Couldn't do that. That's a stupid idea. Who would ever suggest it? Indeed, John, who would suggest it? Anyway, there's always going to be an appetite for a Saturday night game, and Dublin's generally on then. For the hurling supporter, the double bill on Sunday fits well, which is actually not a bad point. Finally, you get to a good point. Look, hurling fans are going to get the double header. We didn't know who was going to be in it. We couldn't rearrange the fixtures at that stage. If you're a hurling fan, and there's loads of neutral hurling fans who will go to those games who aren't from the counties, do they deserve more than the Cork fans who are fans of both hurling and football? It's hard to say, but at least there's an argument. At least there's a conversation about it, as opposed to the can't put the Dublin footballers at 12 noon. I mean, you can do what you want because it's your own organisation. Anyway, Serena Williams, this is yesterday's story. I'm not sure why. Maybe this is the Mayo.
There's more detail, I think.
Of it. Yeah, so she hit the racket 4 times off the ground. A divot came up. This is on one of the outside courts in a non-match, in a training session, and she was fined for it. So I don't know why the hell the Mayo are running with this story. It seems like a nothing story.
Yeah, she's been in the news obviously quite a bit over the last couple of days, obviously for what she's doing on the court, obviously for this story as well. She's also done kind of an In My Own Words piece with Harper's Bazaar as well, where she's spoken, I think, for the first time in good depth about what happened at Flushing Meadows last year. I don't recall her being as frank and open about what happened in that situation with Naomi Osaka. She kind of touches on a lot of the points that a lot of people would have touched on, but the thing she does reveal is that I started seeing a therapist. I was searching for answers, and although I felt like I was making progress, I still wasn't ready to pick up a racket. She says, I realised there was only one way for me to move forward. It was time for me to apologise to the person who deserved it the most. And when Naomi's response came through, tears rolled down my face. People can misunderstand anger for strength because they can't differentiate between the two. No one has stood up for themselves the way you have, and you need to continue trailblazing. So that's what she's had to say about that.
What happened to Flushing Meadows, just remind people?
This is when she had the outburst at the umpire, called the umpire a thief, I think on court as well, accused him of sexism, and obviously caused a huge backlash, not least because this was Naomi Osaka's moment in the spotlight, which some people would have seen as a separate thing as well. And she obviously had won her first Grand Slam. Serena Williams reacted poorly to a few of the calls by the umpire. So that's kind of been hanging over Serena for the last few months as well. And I think maybe the juxtaposition of these two stories is interesting this week.
Is she still angry?
Well,
it's a training. Like, it's in training. You can do what you want in training.
Well, I'd agree with that. Yeah, it's the magnitude of the fine is interesting as well. I mean, the Hallow Turf, as they call it in the Mail there this morning. I'm not sure if that said in a tongue-in-cheek.
I don't think it's any tongue-in-cheek. I mean, it's Wimbledon. Everybody's reminded that the grass is important.
It was in a session with Venus as well, I think. So perhaps that just, I'm sure that she probably gets a bit angrier when she's up against her sister and her sister's killing her in training. Also, Andy Murray was watching the session, which I didn't realise.
Right.
He was just standing there at the sideline watching this all happen. But I think the idea of non-story is probably what I'd associate with this. Like, people get angry when they're about to take on the biggest slam of the year. Now, I'm not exactly sure if I'd actually stood on the side of her during the US Open last year, but certainly in this case, I'm like,
yeah,
people get pissed off.
Gartland backs Dundalk's infectious drive. Brian Gartland says Dundalk's desire for success is infectious ahead of tonight's Champions League opener against Riga FC, and claims it's not just the players who are revved up for a run in Europe. You can't walk anywhere without someone pulling you and having to do something to say. The place is Dundalk mad. You don't see Liverpool and Man United jerseys, you just see Dundalk here everywhere, which is great and a real sign of what can happen in any place where a League of Ireland team beds in and starts to have some success. So there's a blueprint for success there for the rest of the league too.
The back page of the Herald this morning leads with Celtic's result in Sarajevo last night, a 3-1 win for them. Boys in perfect position. They say, no fear for Cork is the main headline then. Rebel boss McCarthy were excited by Croker challenge. Owen Cormacan in the Irish Examiner this morning has actually served a good reminder that Cork played 2 sweepers during the National League and a game against Kildare. And what we're seeing this championship is obviously a new form of how Cork are playing football, that they've taken their National League performances and said, well, that's not working, we're going to focus more on attack. And it clearly seems that McCarthy's going to focus a bit more on what's going forward for them this weekend, because it's worked so well for them over the past couple of games. And Dubs will punish over ambition, so that kind of flies in the face of what Ronan McCarthy is saying. It's Alan Brogan's column this morning saying Rebels can't leave gaps at the back.
The Irish Times this morning, Dara's column, you can see Owen's been taking notes for his piece with Kerry's eye. Can't say that now. Whoa, he's stolen my line here. Is that what?
I've already filed.
Have you? All right, okay. When's it out?
Thursday.
Okay. And does Dara O'Shea agree or disagree with your points this week, Owen?
I would say
now that you've got a beef, now that you've got a real beef with Dara O'Shea that Tomas has been telling him all about.
I would say that our sentiment around this Sunday's game is pretty much exactly the same.
Mayo, a big physical edge over Kerry, but I'm hopeful. So Owen is hopeful, as is Dara O'Shea. Sean Moran writing that if anybody's entitled to travel to Killarney with optimism, it's Horan's men. And he also has a nice little nugget from the Cork, ahead of the Dublin-Cork game. Cork are one of the few teams to have beaten Dublin at the venue in the Jim Gavin era. One of 6 teams.
In the National League?
Yeah.
What year was that?
It's a good question, Owen. I don't have the answer off the top of my head.
2013, I'm going to casually throw out there. Back page of the Sun this morning is stay. Solskjaer wants Pog to sit tight for one more year. We've got new press conference audio as well from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to bring you later on. A normal service resumed. There's Serena and Andy Murray celebrating after their mixed doubles win at Wimbledon yesterday. And it's not Perth-shattering, says Owen Cowser. Vinnie Perth dreams of fixture chaos as Dundalk embark on their Champions League adventure tonight against Riga.
The Racing Post this morning. Prescott and McCain back call for disqualification for whip overuse. Leading trainers Sir Mark Prescott and Donald McCain yesterday joined Charlie Fellows in calling for the use of the whip above the permitted level to result in disqualification. Dettori parties coming to Killarney, so Frankie Dettori is going to make his Killarney debut, as we reported on offtheball.com yesterday, at the Killarney races this year. It's an interesting point about overuse of the whip. What's the point in if you're in a massive race and you think a few extra belts is going to get the horse there, and you take your punishment for 3 days, but you've won a massive race? It's not really a punishment that fits the crime. Whereas if you get disqualified for it, then everybody, the first time it happens, goes. Second time it happens, you're getting fired from that ride the next time, and then it never happens again. Like, if you want to change behaviour, you have to try and do something that's going to have an impact. Three Kings, tennis royalty, continuing quest to rule at Wimbledon. Guess who the three tennis players they are? If you're listening to us on OTB Sports Radio this morning, then I suspect you've guessed that it was Novak Djokovic, Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer on the back of the Racing Post today. All three in action this afternoon.
The Daily Telegraph this morning leads with special relationship. Williams and Murray march on, but British number one Conte crashes out. Their cricket headline then is different Stokes. England all-rounder relishes shot at redemption against Australia. And Sweet 16, the incredible day. A teenage McIlroy scored 61 at Portrush. So this is James Corrigan looking back in 2005 when Rory McIlroy shot a 61 at Royal Portrush. So he set himself the standard 14 years ago at this point for next weekend.
Can he do it again? Do you want him to do it?
Yes, I do. I do want to. I would like to see Rory McIlroy win the Open next week. I would like to see Rory McIlroy get back on the major winning bandwagon again. Yeah,
because you kind of feel like he needs to do it just to remind himself he can do it, and then it'll happen loads more after that. It's like this is kind of getting back up there, as opposed to one last spin. It definitely feels like there's the second flush.
Yeah, because I think the psychological foundation he has at the moment is in a very good place. He's thinking about the game in the right way. He's largely positive when he's speaking about his game. So that win will probably bring him on leaps and bounds in terms of that psychology.
Toon want Bruce. Oh, wow. Imagine if you're a Newcastle fan, you got the third or fourth best manager in the league, and then they're like, no, we're getting rid of you. You're going off to China, and we're bringing in Steve Bruce. Has Steve Bruce been relegated with every club, or did he actually manage to avoid taking some of them down at various stages? Because like mostly my memory is of Steve Bruce being relegated. The hangdog look, I mean, it's not his fault he looks like that, but it's more pronounced when the team isn't doing well. He's just not a great manager. He's a good championship manager. He's an okay championship manager these days. But yeah, imagine that. Newcastle chased Geordie. And there's Sarajevo won Celtic 3 from the Champions League last night. Ed's boots boost. Neil Lennon last night revealed Odsonne Edouard changed boots to help smooth Celtic through their slippy Champions League opener. Barcelona now after Red Devil Lindelof, says the agent. That's a good agent. You know, why are you going out there having a hamburger when you've got a steak at home, Man Utd? That's what he's saying. You don't need Harry Maguire. You need Lindelof. Just give him a chance. All he needs is a chance. What if Lindelof's actually really good? He's just been in a crap team with no midfield helping him out.
Yeah, like, I mean, does he become what this season's version of Joel Matip was when Virgil van Dijk was playing alongside him? I'm not saying that Joel Matip was as castigated as the likes of Victor Lindelof or any of his defensive counterparts at Manchester United have been, but you'd imagine Harry Maguire playing alongside him will bring him on some bit. I think we get confused about this Harry Maguire discourse because I think we all largely agree that the fee being talked about for him is ridiculous. But that is not the same thing as saying that he would improve that defence, because he would, and he probably would be their best central defender. Definitely would be their best central defender if he arrives at Old Trafford.
Yeah, I mean, is he ready for all the pressure that comes from being the most expensive defender in the world?
He seemed to handle the pressure of the World Cup last year fairly well, but then that was a different type of pressure. Maybe that's focused on different players. Maybe the defensive problems at Manchester United have been pointed out as the single biggest failing of that team, and as an individual defender that kind of comes with more pressure, and it's a bit different to the nationalistic pressure that came on being an England player last summer. But he seems like the type of player who will be able to handle it for sure.
The World Cup was shared pressure though, right?
That's what I mean. Like, I mean, it's not focused on a defence, it's not focusing on you also being the new signing, potentially the most expensive defender in the history of the game signing. So of course it's a different sort of pressure, but it's not like he's been blasé throughout his career and you know, wandered through games and clubs and international setups that have been pressure free. The back page of The Guardian this morning is Joanna Conte knocked out and hitting out. She's angry at patronising questions after a straight sets loss. It was quite a string of questions or statistics from IBM, from the journalist in that press conference yesterday.
Go on, tell us, people didn't see it, what happened?
So Joanna Conte came into the press conference after her defeat yesterday at Wimbledon basically saying that there's not much more I could do. You're always facing an opponent at the other end of the net, and on occasion, that opponent is quite good. In Wimbledon, that opponent is almost always good, especially when you get to this stage of the tournament. And then later on in the press conference, our reporter lists off a rake of statistics. You had this amount of unforced errors, you smashed the ball into the net at this point, and she's like, that's so disrespectful, that's such a patronising question. To be fair, if you actually heard it, the tone in which the question was delivered, it was like, this is a ballsy question at the very least. And I think he knew he was putting himself in that position to get a bit of blowback, and that's exactly what happened.
Right. Big news last night coming from the world of boxing. So Katie Taylor did a range of media stuff last night. We put it up online, and Raf wrote the story, and immediately got a tweet from Amanda Serrano, who is effectively calling Katie Taylor out, and they went back and forth a little bit. So here is Katie Taylor talking about her next move. We'll have an update coming on that front next.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure what's next, to be honest. My next fight is going to be in October, November sometime, so I'm happy to fight whoever. There are big names being thrown out, the likes of Pursuing a rematch, and then Serrano as well, but I'm not sure who I'm going to be fighting next. I just do what I'm told, really, and I kind of leave that stuff up to Eddie and Brian.
If it was Serrano, how would you feel kind of matching up with her stylistically in terms of how you would differ?
I think it will be a very, very exciting fight. She's an aggressive southpaw, and she's an explosive puncher as well. I think that's probably one of the biggest fights in boxing right now, not just in women's boxing, and it's a fight that people have talked about for years, and I would absolutely love that fight.
The European Games were on in Minsk, Irish boxing kind of bouncing back. There had been a difficult period since 2016. What have you made of that kind of rebound?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. I think boxing has always been our number one sport, and it's been the sport where we've been consistent and always brought back big medals. So it's great to see that, and yeah, I mean it's absolutely incredible.
Well, that got Amanda Serrano's attention, all right. So it's a fight people have talked about for years, and I would absolutely love that fight, was the quote that we had. And then Amanda Serrano obviously searching her name. I must agree with that, Katie Taylor, on this one. It's the biggest fight in boxing, period. We are both balls-to-the-wall warriors, and the true winners will be the fans. Hope negotiations can be made ASAP. And I must agree with Katie Taylor on this one. Will Eddie Hearn make it happen? I'm ready, says Amanda Serrano, who finally, I think, we're going to see this fight. And then clearly she wants it. So when both sides want it, there's a good chance that this fight will actually be made. And we'll have a couple. I mean, the thing to do here is to make the fight now, and we've got a couple of months build up, and they're all friendly now, and then they start, realising that they're going to go to war against each other, and we get to see finally another. Sorry, in fairness, the last fight was a good fight, good even fight. Then this one will be another one, and then there'll be the rematch after that. And it's like it's taken a couple of years, as it takes every single boxer a couple of years to find a level where we know enough about them and their opponents for it to matter. Like if you think about Michael Conlan, right, and all the fights that he's had up to this point, how many of them have actually been very interesting in terms of he himself has talked about how they've been tomato cans, but he doesn't get killed for the standard in men's boxing the way Katie Taylor gets, there's no one good enough to fight her. It's like, well, that's not how boxing works. Like you fight what's in front of you, you win the belts, and then eventually other contenders emerge. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on Katie Taylor, and I'm delighted that we have a new follower in Amanda Serrano, because we're going to be writing a lot about you.
Her quotes on Amanda Serrano yesterday were actually quite interesting at the press conference. Before Serrano actually came out with this tweet, she spoke about a 3-year deal that Serrano has with a promoter, and on this contract, according to Katie, this is her quotes, she has to fight me, I think, is a third fight. She is one fight in, so she has to fight again, and then I'm next. Amanda's claiming that she didn't see that contract now, so I'm not sure what's going on, but obviously that's a fight I would absolutely love. So there's clearly been some discussion going on in the background, and Serrano's like, yeah, well, actually fancy this fight right now or whenever it may have been.
Well, she obviously changed her tune since she read that, or maybe that's just a good bit of marketing. So if Katie Taylor's next fight is October, November, Serrano could have a tune-up fight soon against Tomato Can, and that stipulation in her contract will be filled. So, okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about Johnny Sexton. So this is a Rory O'Connor exclusive on the back of the Independent this morning, which says that he's got a thumb injury and he's unable to participate in full training at the moment. He suffered it between June 16th and June 28th. So that's obviously a couple of weeks ago at this point. believed to be a dislocation, and it could keep him sidelined for between 4 and 6 weeks.
Yeah, so the line from Murray is he may be fit. He may be fit in time for the opening World Cup warm-up game against Italy. That's on August the 10th.
My recollection of the last World Cup warm-up games was that there was nothing of major significance and nothing of massive interest. Now, it was a more...
Except for Tommy O'Donnell's World Cup getting ended.
Yeah, absolutely, on the negative side, right? But like, there was no interest in power plays that we're practicing here, or in line-out moves, or in how well the maul is functioning, or in any of that stuff, really, because we kind of knew what the team was. Everybody was fit. If everybody was fit, we knew what the team was. This time, there's probably a little bit of wiggle room. We're not sure who's going to be on the plane. Schmidt has definitely been more open to changing his team since that, I think, as a result of what happened in the World Cup. So, I don't know. I'm not trying to hype up the World Cup warm-ups, because, when they come around, it'll be more about who made it through the game injury-free than actually who played particularly well, with the exception of a couple of positions. And we'll talk about those in the depth chart with Alan Quinlan next week. But you need Sexton fit and in form.
Well, without question, if Ireland are going to break their quarter-final duck, they will more than likely need Johnny Sexton to play in that quarter-final should they get there. So this is the situation we're in. That being said, I mean, when we look back on 2015, how are we fixed in every backup position at this moment? Well, if we were looking at this before the Six Nations, everything seemed rosy. It seemed that we had a backup player in every position. Now there seems to have been a loss of fitness, particularly when it comes to the back row, and a loss of form in plenty of positions as well. So this is obviously opportunity for the likes of Joey Carberry, but crucially, it's an opportunity for the likes of Jack Carty and Ross Byrne over these next few weeks to impress in training. I mean, I don't know if Rory here mentions particularly grueling sessions that they're having in training. You'd imagine that there might be a few practice sessions here, there might be a few competitors going head to head for vital, valuable places on a plane. This puts the likes of Carty and Byrne in the shop window now as to, right, there could be a bigger place for you here if Sexton's injury worries continue over the next couple of months. Yeah,
because there was a debate about whether or not he takes an extra scrum half or an extra out half, and maybe, because Cooney can obviously play both, maybe it gives Cooney a better chance. Because it gets just a bit of fear. It's like, well, so if Sexton goes down and Carberry starts and I have nobody else?
Yeah, I like it's hard to know what he's actually going to do in that situation, because obviously Carberry's going and he's definitely on the plane, assuming fitness kind of holds up and all that sort of thing. Like, the other thing about all this is, I wonder what say, well, I don't wonder, I know for a fact that the say that Johnny Sexton has in how Ireland plays is huge. It's humongous. I mean, he is the fulcrum of how Ireland sets up. Does Joey Carberry have that same influence? Of course he has to when he's number 10 playing for Ireland at any point, but does he have that natural influence? Does he have that ability to lead the team amongst the backs when Ireland are in open play? That's perhaps a question mark, but this can be ironed out now over the next couple of weeks. This is an opportunity for Joey Carberry because he's going to be called upon. Okay, so in January we did our depth chart with Andy Dunn, and we're going to play you that on OTB Sports Radio at 9:30 immediately after the show this morning. So get on to Go Loud, and that's our new app. You should download that if you don't have it already. It's an opportunity for you to listen to Off the Ball all day, every day on OTB Sports Radio. So we'll bring you back to January before the Six Nations to show you what the depth chart was when Andy Dunn did that around about 9:30. There was one other thing we wanted to talk about this morning, and that was Declan Bogue's column in the Examiner this morning. So it's front page. Tyrone players were seriously out of tune with their actions in Auchnacoy. So again, this was kind of the weirdest story of the summer, in that Arlene Foster was commenting on video footage which emerged from the Tyrone team bus of them singing Come Out You Black and Tans, and it happened in Auchnacoy in Tyrone after the game against Cavan. So is that Saturday evening? Yeah.
It's after Saturday evening. To give some context, so here's what happened was their bus ended up being held up in Auchnacoy while they waited for the local Lisgenny flute band who were parading through the town. And you've made the notes there, but Declan Bogue is actually living in that community, and talks about how huge efforts have been made by the local GAA club of which he's a member to create a safe space free from sectarianism. And actually, because I saw this and I was like, is this really that big a deal? You know, it's just... And then actually somebody who lives and works there says it is a big deal for loads of reasons, and begins to kind of just very calmly and rationally point out why you need to just check yourself and think about these things. He was saying that a bunch of his friends from the local GAA club who might be from a Protestant or Unionist background were getting texts in the immediate aftermath of this going, see, we told you. And it just helps to paint the picture of his very casual, very careful phraseology is that anybody who might have thought that the GAA was, what's the line?
If you're inclined to believe that the GAA is sectarian, then this would only back up your prejudice.
Yeah, so the GAA needs to fight that battle because the whole point about sport is that it's supposed to bring people together as opposed to entrenching prejudice. And if you look at what's going on in the north at the minute, then this stuff does have to be stamped out and it does have to be spoken about. And then you do have to be very careful about making sure that GAA buses aren't a safe space for rebel songs, which if the video gets out is going to show other potential members of the GAA clubs that they're not welcome. And look, in fairness, Tyrone came out and said that it was unacceptable. So you would hope that they are actually actively dealing with it.
Yeah, and Bogue does talk about how difficult it might be for some of the Tyrone players at work this week. He says that some are in respected professions and will have Protestant clients. Others will work for firms and teach in schools that will take a very dim view of it as well, which is another element to keep in mind. He does give a bit of slack to Tyrone GAA. As you mentioned there, they have come out and said it was unacceptable at the weekends. And Bogue himself says that he attended a brilliant talk last November organised by Tyrone GAA. So this was focused on GAA members who had fought in World War I. And he noticed the sign-in book had a few RAF names. Instead of their club, they'd put in RAF. So that kind of shows the work that they've been doing on that front. And also the point you made at the top there, like I didn't know the context of this. I didn't know in what sort of precise setting this took place on Saturday night. He says that the parade used to take place, the flute parade used to take place at 7:30 p.m. on a Saturday night. However, that coincided with the local Saturday night mass at St. Mary's Catholic Church. So in the spirit of cooperation, the band delayed to start at 8:30 p.m. So this is not some sort of situation where it's being rubbed in the GAA's faces or anything like that. This is a community that's gone out of their way to make sure that these two things don't inflame one another.
And they can coexist. And
exactly.
It turns out it's pretty easy to coexist with a little bit of cooperation. So it's a great piece, worth your time this morning in the Examiner from Declan Bogue, who always writes very thoughtful stuff. 5 minutes past 8 this Wednesday morning. You're watching or you're listening to OTB AM, wherever you're consuming us this morning. Up next, we're getting in depth with our Super 8's preview as Tipperary star Michael Quinlivan joins us in studio